Throughout history, marginalized groups have been made to compromise in times of great adversity. When faced with dire conflict, those who are oppressed will rise above their means and persevere. The year is 1942. Around the world, global conflict of unprecedented levels is occurring. World War II has been raging for nearly 3 years and is quickly dissolving into chaos. In the United States, the American lifestyle has been transformed to one that focuses on the home front. The landscape of the nation is one of great uncertainty and even greater fear. On December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy, the war was made personal for the American public. The attacks on Pearl Harbor, a United States naval base by the Japanese Imperial military, brought to attention the realities of war and the possibility of the U.S. becoming a battleground. While President Franklin D. Roosevelt immediately declared war on Japan, many felt that the thousands of lives lost at Pearl Harbor had gone unaddressed. Hostile sentiments throughout the country against those of Japanese ancestry had been steadily rising. In a misguided attempt to protect national security and to address the nation's racially charged fears of further Japanese attack or sabotage. On February 19, 1942, FDR issued Executive Order 9066, a decision that would ultimately start a shameful chapter in American history. The order cleared way for the incarceration of Japanese Americans. This was when Roy Ebihara, only 8 years old, experienced for the first time what it felt like to be hated in his own country. Throughout the next 4 years, he was continually confronted by hardship and what seemed like insurmountable situations. But Roy and his family not only survived the war, but never allowed their spirits and patriotism to be destroyed.
The vigilante group was coming out to kill us. And so the state patrol got a wind of that. The local law enforcement really knew about it, but really were not going to do anything about it. During the course of the night, we were driven to a German POW camp that was established somewhere in the western part of New Mexico. My sister said, "We're not going in there. You're violating our constitutional rights." Here's a high school girl telling them right from wrong. We were in that, placed in that camp in the early part of that daylight, and we existed there for almost a year.
Over the course of the following years, 120,000 men, women, and children of Japanese ancestry were evicted from the west coast of the United States and held in American concentration camps and other confinement sites across the country. Families were ripped from their homes, jobs, and livelihoods, and transported to facilities throughout the western United States. Famously, even orphan infants with 1 drop of Japanese blood were placed in internment camps.
My brother was caught up in this roundup of all the Japanese Americans on the West Coast. He ended up in Utah. And so there was a camp established called Topaz, Utah, in the Severn Desert out there. And so we wanted to be together as a family, so we joined him over there. It was the first time I saw guard towers with machine guns and 14-foot high barbed wire fences. And we were going into truly America's concentration camp.
The 70,000 American citizens in internment camps struggled with the fact that what they were going through could happen in their country. Civil disobedience and protests from the outside world took place, but inside the camps, many felt hopeless to change their situation. Roy's eldest brother, Henry Ebihara, felt that he needed to gain control of his situation, while also aiding the war effort in the only way he knew how.
My brother said the only way we're ever going to climb out of this chaotic situation will be to prove our loyalty to this country by asking the president the right to join the armed forces and fight for our country, the only country we ever known. He just had this patriotic fervor. 2 of his buddies died in Pearl Harbor. They were on the battleships in Pearl Harbor, and they drowned, went down with the ship. So no wonder my brother felt that he needed to vindicate their death.
At the height of conflict during the war, Henry was finally given the opportunity to join the armed forces and do his part to end the war.
By that time, the government said the second generation Japanese Americans, called Niseis, born in America, will be allowed to join the armed forces. However, he was excluded because my mother brought him from Japan at the age of 2.5. So my brother proceeded to write the President of the United States and the Secretary of War, Henry Stimson, at that time, pleading his case that how could a nation fighting a war to protect its freedom have a little issue with a birthplace that would not allow him to fight for the only country he's ever known. And when that went to the President and the Secretary of War, nothing was done until such time as I understood from my brother. Eleanor Roosevelt happened to saunter by the President's desk, picked up that letter, read that emotional plea, and she pleaded with the President to let her talk to my brother by phone in the camp. They called my brother to the administration building where he talked to Eleanor Roosevelt, and she said, "Son, what can I do for you?" He said, "Please let me join the Army, let me fight for the only country I know." And so she took that message to the President, and the President in turn ordered the Secretary of War, Mr. Simpson, to allow my brother to join the armed forces. So he became the first Japan-born individual to be in the armed forces during World War II.
Soon after Henry was granted the right to become a serviceman, Ebihara recounts the experience of his sister and father's struggle for freedom as civilians.
My sister, who said, "This is wrong, I'm going to walk out." And they said, "We're going to have to kill you if you try to walk out." She said, "Well, so be it." At that point, the War Relocation Authority said, "Look, hold your horses. We're going to find ways to get you out." Quaker groups are protesting the incarceration of Japanese Americans. Well, the government said, "Look, if you can find them housing, find them jobs, whatever out there east of the Mississippi, we'll release them one by one." And so it happened that my brother, my sister, and my father were the first ones to allow to leave the Topaz relocation camp.
Eventually, as the war progressed, the final members of the Ebihara family, including Roy himself, were released from the Topaz internment camp to join his father in Cleveland.
And my dad became the first, quote, Japanese alien to work in America's defense plant. Our family was then allowed in December of 1943, became the first family to leave Topaz. Well, it took a long time, but when we look back, the people of Cleveland, in spite of the fact that the war was raging, we felt that there were kindness there somehow. We were not persecuted as we thought we would be coming out while the war was raging.
On December 17th, 1944, Public Proclamation No. 21 was issued by Major General Henry C. Pratt, declaring the end of Japanese internment, and in January 1945, Japanese Americans began to return to their homes. In the years following World War II, Executive Order 9066 and the American government's treatment towards Japanese Americans as a whole came under serious review. And over 40 years later, in 1988, surviving internees received reparations in the form of $20,000 US.
Aiko's brother and I went around to various congressmen, including Don Pease, and said, "It's the right thing for you to do. No matter what the compensation, we're not arguing about how much. We're saying compensate the people for 2 to 4 years of loss of their life."
Today, the culture of Japanese Americans has evolved to become one of unity, preservation, and perseverance against adversity that so many suffered through.
There's something beautiful about the culture. It tells us who we are. It's something that my parents gave to us. Bringing that culture here, building a bridge, so to speak, between the Western culture and the Eastern culture, so that this is what America is. It's an amalgamation of all the cultures here, and I think that's what makes America great. It's putting together all these cultures, enjoying every culture there is.